Welcome to It's Not You, It's Grief, a safe space to have candid conversations surrounding the many faces of grief. How do you handle the process while moving forward and ultimately getting back to living in the moment? Come on this journey as we navigate grief through the art of storytelling. And now for your host, Ahira Smith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to It's Not You, It's Grief podcast. My name is Ahira Smith, and I am the grief mending coach. Today, we have a very beautiful and unique episode that I really want to share with you all as my audience. October is known as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I know that there has been a lot of information floating around about breast cancer, how much it impacts women as well as men, making sure that folks get screened and checked and double checked and triple checked for any type of breast cancer history in folks' families. And today, I really wanted to make sure that there was a platform for several people who have been impacted with breast cancer directly and to talk about their journey as far as being survivors, as far as being victorious on their journey regarding breast cancer, and how much their lives have evolved from this type of experience. I, for one, have not been impacted directly with breast cancer, but I've had a lot of friends who have been. And of course, it impacts me indirectly because of my love and support for them. And so today I really wanted to just have a place to have a conversation with two lovely women who I just had the pleasure of meeting, whose stories resonated with me so much that I felt like it was really a place for them to come on my show to talk about not only grief and loss during their own journey regarding breast cancer and being a survivor of it, but also to just kind of educate us as well as to provide some words of wisdom that can help others who are listening or watching this video. And so without further ado, I would very much like to introduce my two special guests, Miss Jenn and Miss Stacey, who are on here from Los Angeles, folks. So please know, even though I'm on East Coast time, they're on that West Coast time, and that's 3 hour difference. So so
It's
I
almost
appreciate
happy hour
you.
for you.
Say that again, Jen.
I said it's almost happy hour for you.
See, it's yes, it's close to happy hour for me, but it is already happy hour because I have you two ladies on my show. So thank you so much. Thank you. And so without again, I have Jen and Stacey from Los Angeles. How are you ladies doing today?
It's a good day. It's a great day.
It's a great day.
Happy to be here. Yeah, this is our
Well,
very first podcast together. Um,
wow.
so yeah, we're happy.
Well, I'm honored. I have you both on my podcast at the same time. I'm very honored. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, whoever would like to go first, I know Jen and Stacey, we talked very briefly before we started that one of you has recently been dealing with this um, area on the journey as far as breast cancer is concerned. And I know somebody who who's had some time in terms of processing it. So whichever you ladies like to go first, I would love for you to just kind of
Well,
tell your
I'll
story.
start. We can just start talking about it. I was
Okay.
diagnosed in late 2016, so basically the end of December, with stage 4 triple negative breast cancer, which apparently is the most aggressive type of breast cancer. And it was related to having the breast cancer gene that I never knew I had. And it was also related to not getting screened appropriately for mammograms, because I was getting a regular mammogram, but I wasn't getting ultrasounds with my mammogram because my gynecologist never told me I needed to do that. So the mammogram failed to detect a big tumor that was growing in my breast. So I started treatment in 2017, and I am now 6 years cancer free. But the journey was definitely one that changed my entire life for the better. I didn't know in the beginning if I was going to live or die, and I didn't want to die in 2 years being miserable. So I
Mm,
chose to embrace my diagnosis as like, okay, this is going to be the best thing that happens to me, because
mm,
I wanted to be happy in the last years, whether I was going to live or die. And it became the best thing that happened to me. So there was something like that really taught me about the power of love and gratitude and mindset while we go through everything. And I went through all of the treatment, 8 surgeries, chemo, radiation, and it it taught me so much.
wow. Wow, 8 surgeries, and again, and the fact that you were having mammograms, but your gynecologist wasn't recommending ultrasounds. I'm curious. You mentioned that there was a gene, a hereditary gene. So did you know of anybody in your family who had breast cancer?
So my grandmother had breast cancer, but she was also a smoker, and she had lung cancer, and it was not something I was ever thinking about. And my parents are both alive, and they've never had cancer. Um, I definitely tell every woman, Black, white, Hispanic, young, old, get a genetic testing for the BRCA gene, because if you have the BRCA gene, you are basically guaranteed to get breast cancer. Not guaranteed, but it's like a 70% chance in your lifetime. And so they screen you much more if they know you have the BRCA gene. And I don't know if you know Angelina Jolie's story. She found out she had the BRCA gene, and she did a preventative double mastectomy, so she wouldn't get breast cancer. So I found out after my diagnosis, and then my whole family got tested for it. And my mom and my sister did not have the gene, but my dad did. So it can come from either parent. But I always like to say, I learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm still happy that everything happened the way it was, because stage 4 just really shows how dramatic something can be and how you can make something turn into a positive no matter how dark. So if I had to do it all again, I would, obviously be much more aware of all the things that I learned, but at the same time, I wouldn't change anything.
And that's fascinating because you said that the family got tested, and your mom and your sister were clear, but the BRCA gene actually came from your dad.
It
So
came from my
that's
dad.
fascinating itself because, a lot of people, majority of people feel like, well, breast cancer is just with women. They seldom believe or hear stories about men who also have the BRCA gene or even get diagnosed with breast cancer in itself. So the fact that
Mhm.
you are saying, yes, look, my dad had the gene and he got tested, that speaks volumes, because like you, I agree with you. I think because of all of the different health issues that are out there, and not just that of breast cancer or ovarian cancer or all these other types of cancers, and even those that are not, just having the genetic testing, it helps people become, like you said, be more proactive and take
Mhm.
preventive measures,
Mhm.
to have that type of quality life we want to have in our 70s and 80s and 90s, so that definitely,
Exactly. Yeah, my
it's a
sister was ready to remove everything if she had
mm,
it. Um,
okay.
it's good that my dad knows, because now they'll just screen him more for prostate cancer, and men have a
Okay.
very low percentage of getting breast cancer. It's like 3%. So
Okay.
if you're a male with the BRCA gene, it's definitely not as big of a deal as it is as a female.
Okay.
But because I had the BRCA gene, part of my treatment was removing my ovaries, because ovarian cancer is also related to the BRCA gene.
Wow. And you see, I appreciate you educating us because again, I would have never thought about how the BRCA gene also impacts that of ovarian cancer. That's fascinating. Wow. Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So Stacy, please be kind enough to share your story if you would.
Okay, so my name's Stacey, and I was diagnosed at the end of 2020 during the pandemic. My diagnosis came due to a delayed mammogram because of from the pandemic. Everyone, they weren't used, you couldn't go, you couldn't get
Right.
in.
Right.
For me, that was a blessing in disguise. I had already been being screened through an oncologist because I had what they referred to as dense breast. So that automatically kind of guaranteed me where I had the 3D mammogram versus a regular mammogram annually. When I went in December of 2020, delayed, they must have seen something. And then they said, oh, we're going to do an ultrasound. And I went, well, that's odd. Okay. But I didn't really go there because I have autoimmune on top of this. And I just assumed I've already been dealt my bad card. I'm not going to get breast cancer. You know, I've already been dealing with a lot. Therefore, I really wasn't worried. Okay. Then you get the doctor comes in and sits down and says, we need to do a biopsy. You know, we're seeing this is very suspicious, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why mine was a blessing in disguise is mine was so small. Had I done my mammogram, which I always did in August, it would not have shown up. And so because of the pandemic, it showed itself because I was delayed in my screening. And then I was immediately, my journey, a little different than Jen's. Mine was a hormone-driven cancer. So I was what's called positive, negative. And with that being, it's a hormone-driven cancer, our treatment, my surgery was immediate, where Jenn, you had treatment.
I had chemo first to remove the tumor, and then the surgery, and then radiation, and then all my other surgeries. So yeah, every breast cancer, every cancer, it's treated in a different way. And even different hospitals treat things differently. And like your chemo drugs were probably different than my chemo drugs, and my rounds were different than her rounds. And yeah, there's no science behind it, but also I interviewed with doctors and oncologists from 3 different hospitals. I needed to feel so safe with the doctors I chose. And if I went with the first oncologist I met, I probably would not have been here. So I met with my UCLA people, the 3rd oncologist. Sorry, that is my husband. The 3rd oncologist is when I felt totally safe, and they had a whole treatment regime and different chemo drugs that I just knew, like, the person I'm going to trust my life with is with this person. And I always tell people, and you do too, like, yeah. I turned my phone off. It's not working, but so I always tell people, get at least 2 opinions, because you don't want to just check off the person.
I agree with you. You know, any type of diagnosis that a person receives, they definitely should have second and third opinions. I mean, just to help you process, to help re-educate you on what you're learning about this new side that's impacting you, and as well to make you feel comfortable and safe in the decisions that's going to be forthcoming in terms of moving forward. So I definitely I do appreciate you reiterating the importance of having more than just one opinion regarding such news, because again, everybody process news differently, just like people process grief and loss differently. It's not one set way. You know,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, you went through chemo, you went through radiation, you went through certain treatments before you decided to have your surgeries, versus Stacey, you know, even though you had a delay mammogram for what was shown to you. And again, I'm sure you had several opinions, you know, following it. They were like, you know what, let's just go ahead and just do the surgery right out the gate. And then, you know, we'll do the reverse. We'll do the treatment, or we'll do, you know, so it's not a one size fits all. you know,
Never,
and
Never.
it's
never.
never been like that. And I think that's just life itself. You know, people think, oh, well, you know, I went through this. I had a breast cancer. I'm like, yeah, but your journey with breast cancer is going to be different from hers because you might have had a support system. She might not have. You might have had a history of breast cancer in your family where you're the first one. So it's still different, you know, and I think it's important for people to understand is that there may be times when we're facing adversity, um, and it may feel lonely, but we're not really alone because again, there are other people who can still provide a certain type of support to help with the processing of it all. At least that's just my opinion.
Exactly. When I was diagnosed, as well as Jen, I think it's super important to get multiple opinions and treatment options. I too did, I met with three doctors as well. Found the one that was the right fit for me. I was lucky on mine. All three doctors had the exact same treatment plan. So I felt very comfortable with that. Mine was done at Cedars-Sinai, where Jen is a UCLA.
And yeah, I also
No.
was going to say that everyone does process everything differently, but there are key things that I've learned to help going through anything. And part of it is the being able to receive help from others, because so many women are so either scared to want help or need help or ask for help, and they want to deal with everything by themselves. And there's so many people that want to love and support you, even if they're people that you don't know. And your podcast is probably really helping a lot of people just have a community that is so important, because that's why we're all here. Like, I'm here alive and well, and I'm so grateful to be alive, and I'm so grateful to have lessons to share to help others. And I had to learn the big lesson of receiving love. Like, I had such a great family support system and husband and dog, and I let everyone hold me up. And that was a huge thing for me. I grew up as a gymnast, hardcore athlete. I did everything myself. And this was like a lesson I needed to learn. And once I was able to receive the love, it's like, now I want more.
See,
now I want more love.
And I was the opposite.
Yeah.
I was very isolated because of COVID. So my treatment, my husband could come into my doctor's appointment, the very first one with each oncologist. Otherwise than that, even from my surgery to everything, he was never allowed in.
Yeah.
So for mine, like when going through, I had 26 rounds of chemotherapy weekly. I was dropped off at the door and I was picked up 8 hours later. You know, so mine was very isolating. And my thought was, because I hadn't really come out with it, and being that I had autoimmune on top of it, none of my friends really, except maybe a handful of people, even knew I had autoimmune. So I had always kept that very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
As well as with the breast cancer, I did the same thing. So it was very different. And I tried to shield my children from what I was going through, rather than bring them in and embrace and have them love on me. I was doing the opposite, is saying, I'm fine, you know, let me just go through this. So it was very different.
So Stacey,
but very isolating. Go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of different things. One, you mentioned about your children as far as kind of shielding them from what was going on. Was that based off the fact that of their ages? I don't know how young or how old they were. Was it again because of the pandemic itself, where everything was just overwhelming everybody? It was like, oh my God, here's something else that my kids don't need on top of that. Like, what made you decide not to include them in these conversations? Was it the age? Was it the pandemic itself? Or just even you processing it all?
I didn't want them. Well, my kid, they were in college.
Okay.
So they were in college. I have twin boys. I just didn't want them to worry. No different than even with my autoimmune. I downplay it.
Mhm.
I just didn't want, they don't need that worry on them. They have enough being a kid, young man, growing up in today's society. There's enough on their plate.
Mhm.
Was that the right decision? Probably not. I should have probably would, if I had to do it again, I would have brought them in, educated them probably more so than I did, and let them actually really see the entire experience
Okay.
rather than shelter them from it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
You
And
know,
so,
you
no,
learn,
go ahead.
you
No, oh
learn.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, the fact that this was going on during the pandemic, your husband dropping you off and just you're like, okay, honey, see you later. 8 hours go by, you're drained, you're exhausted, you're just like, I'm tired. I can't even imagine what toll that took on you or even that of your husband witnessing all this and not being there to be there for you had the pandemic not be there. I'm sure that took a toll on everybody involved. So one of the things I'd like to ask, because there's I think, and this is just my honest opinion, the conversation surrounding breast cancer has definitely been more visible, been more vocal. Probably, I would say, like the last 10, 15 years than when I was growing up in the 90s, like you ladies are, just depending on how old you are. Do you feel that I mean, there's always more we can do, but do you feel like the conversations are staying consistent as far as educating people about people getting tested? Do you feel like it's consistent, or do you feel like, okay, well, we're coming to October, so now I guess we'll just put up our flyers and we'll start doing all these Zooms or webinar meetings about breast cancer and educating?
Personally, I feel maybe it's just because now we have a company and I wrote a book and I'm in the world, and so many people I know have either had cancer or know someone who is going through cancer. And I feel like we're constantly just sharing information. So in Los Angeles, I don't get the sense that it's only October. It's pretty much going through all year round, unfortunately, because everyone's getting cancer. I felt it was interesting when I was diagnosed and trying to get seen into an oncologist and making all my appointments and being on wait lists. It made me feel like I'm going into a popular club, like everyone in LA had cancer because I couldn't even get into some oncologist that I had wanted to meet. So I don't feel there's a lack.
Okay.
But also one of our whole things in building this website and company is giving everyone a space to come, whatever cancer they have, whatever challenge they have. Zero negative is based on turning negatives into positives. My negative challenge was cancer and Stacey's was cancer. But we are all going through lots of things that come to us because we're human beings. And it's our kind of calling whether we want to turn it into something negative or turn it into something really helpful and growthful and make us stronger and wiser and something that we can share and help others.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that we've really prided ourselves on in coming up with this, with our business and what we're doing in advocacy, is really trying to help people know that knowledge is power. And if we can help provide this knowledge from lessons we've learned, as well as our ambassadors and people that we know or people we've mentored through this process, if we can make a difference in someone's lives, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Is just the knowledge is so powerful, and times are consistently changing. The science of everything is changing.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I'm alive from a stage 4 diagnosis would not have been the case 10 years ago.
Right.
And a lot of people find out if they have stage 4, they already are adjusted to, oh, I'm going to die. But,
Mm,
I'm here to say, like, no, stage 4 is not a death sentence anymore. I mean, it
mm,
can be, the odds
right.
are against us,
Hmm.
but we don't have to just give up because we hear stage 4.
But the knowledge is power. Had you
Oh,
put
yeah.
your head in the sand and went, okay, I have stage 4, and you throw the towel in,
Mhm.
Right.
rather than she interviewed 3 different oncologists.
Yeah.
She's been given all this information. She's able to make educated decisions
Yeah.
on her own.
Hmm.
Like how she said there was one doctor she interviewed that probably wasn't the right fit for her.
Yeah. Like if they were scared, that wasn't going to help me feel scared better. I needed someone at least to feel confident, that I had a chance.
Right. Right.
So,
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because again, we talked about the fact that you both of you went to several different doctors, and just just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But the fact that you mentioned the fact, like, the first one was scared, I'm like, wow. And it's definitely about the mindset. I do believe it all starts with the mind. When you ladies were told of your diagnosis, what was going through your head? Was there denial? But like, because again, Jen, I'm kind of getting like, oh, okay, well, hey, I'm about to turn this negative to a positive. I'm not going anywhere. I'm fighting this,
yeah, that didn't happen right away.
right.
I mean,
So,
anything, it is stage 2, stage 3, stage 1. When you're saying you have cancer, it's like your whole world is shattered. And
mm,
like Stacey, I was an athlete, I was a yoga teacher, I was a singer-songwriter, I was a newlywed, I was trying to have a baby. Cancer
mm,
was not on my schedule.
right.
And and then I was diagnosed and they thought, oh, it's maybe stage 2. And then within a week, it was stage 4. So it was, to me, it felt like I was being punished by the universe. I wasn't getting pregnant when I wanted to. I felt like my purpose was missed and like, let's just get rid of this chick and let her start again. That's sort of like my initial thought. I really thought like nothing made sense anymore and I was just going to die.
Mm,
And then throughout my research and meetings with oncologists and learning that if I had gotten pregnant when I had wanted to, the pregnancy would have killed me, that's what changed everything for me. And so I realized cancer was coming to save my life and not kill me. And so
so
then my mindset changed in an instant.
absolutely, absolutely. So it definitely sounds, based off your story, Jen, and yours, Stacy, that you had not only dealing with the 5 stages of grief, like anger, loss, and bargaining and all that, but you definitely had various types of grief, because it sounds like, Jen, you had the complicated grief to the point where, one moment you're here at stage 2, then it's 4. It's like, how did you get from 2 to 4? And then on top of that, it impacted the idea of possibly having a baby, which probably also complicated things. And you were a newlywed, and again, you're an athlete. So it sounds like that grief was that you were experiencing from that diagnosis was very complicated, as to where Stacy, from what I'm hearing, you were going through not only a complicated but cumulative grief, because you were diagnosed towards the the pandemic. So you're dealing with the delay of the mammogram initially, but the delay of the mammogram took it to where, okay, you got to see these doctors. It's like 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, well, you got to see them, but then you're still dealing with the pandemic. You're
Mhm.
still dealing with oh, well, we're backed up for this many days or weeks and months. And so there's that cumulative grief. I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with this. It's not diagnosis during a pandemic. We're all wearing masks. We don't know when we can take the mask off, or, if, and even when you're going through your treatment, your husband's dropping you off, and there's that isolation felt. So it blows my mind when I have these conversations with people when it comes to grief and loss, that there's just more than just the stages of what people think is happening, when it's much bigger than that. Just like your cancer, like just like your journey with breast cancer is much bigger than just breast cancer. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
life altering. It's life altering. So,
Mhm.
if I may ask, what did you learn about grief and loss now after the diagnosis versus before any of this, before your life changed?
Well, I feel I was experiencing a lot of grief and loss when I was going through IVF and not getting pregnant in 3 rounds, and I had miscarriages, and I was going through a lot of grief and loss, which was making me very depressed and making me see life as like everyone has everything that they want, and I don't have what I want. I saw what I didn't have and what everybody else had. And so I was really depressed. And then all of a sudden I get stage 4 cancer. Get this person out of here. You know, she's not a help for society anymore. And then I realized, learning that I wasn't supposed to have a child and this was coming to me for a reason. And I started seeing life completely different. Like, it didn't matter if I had a kid, it just mattered that I was alive. And I saw so much of what I could be grateful for that wasn't in my mind before stage 4 cancer. And I was going through a lot of changes and I had no idea what my body was going to look like. And I was losing things and and what I learned most is that you just, one, have to trust and allow the process of the grieving, but also allow that you're here as a human being, you're alive, you're going to experience grief, you're going to experience loss. How to get through that is by sharing and understanding why it's happening. I believe every soul calls into their life what their lessons are supposed to be. And I called in cancer to teach me how much I had and to show me that everything can be looked at in a negative way or in a positive way. You can see what you lack or you can see what you have. And focusing on more of what you have, even if it's the lessons that you're learning through all the grief, that's a little better way of understanding it than making it like the universe hates me and I'm going to be sad all my life. And why did this happen to me? You know, like, well, why didn't it happen to me? I'm a human being. So I think it's all about turning grief into love and to light. And to do that, it's sharing your story, it's connecting, and it's finding meaning in it.
Mhm. Stacey, what
And
about you? What did you learn about grief and loss, or what did you know about it prior to the diagnosis, and now how do you look at it?
right. And mine very similar to Jen, but yet a little bit different is I mentioned that I had the autoimmune, which what I have is I have lupus. So your body's allergic to itself. So anything I put in my system, whether it be a medication or have an illness, I'm going to have whatever that complication is, regardless. So when I got the cancer diagnosis, I went, holy moly, how am I going to deal with this? You know, what's this going to now do to me? Am I going to survive? For me, I know with the stage 2, I immediately went in, and I don't know if it wasn't that I wasn't accepting of the diagnosis, and it very well could be I was not accepting it. I went through the stages of, meeting the doctors, then having the surgery, and always went in with this extremely positive attitude. But I think that was kind of me, and it was probably hiding the fear. I hid the fear. My first day of chemotherapy, I'm like, game on, let's go. Hook me up, let's infuse this poison and get it behind us. And I think I used that as I used it as a shield to not feel really how I was feeling. And then what I learned is I was having to cope with things that I never expected I would have to deal with, which was I couldn't look at myself. And that was one of my journey. And I didn't think it would be difficult for me with the losing of your hair. And I did do a cap treatment and trying to save my hair, and it didn't work. But to look at yourself in the mirror and who is this person? That was a huge loss. That to me was such a huge loss. Or your how your body looks. Those aren't things people talk about,
No.
of what that does to you internally. And what I learned from that is being in the infusion rooms, because during the pandemic too, we were all almost in like our own little private room. So the only time you would see another patient is you're wheeling your IV pole to go to the restroom. That's really your only interaction besides with your nurse. They had asked me a couple times, would you mind speaking to this patient or this patient? Because I did always come in with a positive attitude. I think attitude is everything. It changes the direction of where you're going. For me, the glass is always full. And that helped me deal with every side effect I had, because I did. If there was a side effect to be had, I had every single one of them and then some. But in sharing my story, and because these are things, as I said, the shit they don't tell you when you're undergoing chemo. Someone's not going to tell you all the possible side effects, because there are some people that will manifest them in their head and then get them. If you're told A through Z could possibly happen, there are some people will then get A through Z immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, I was told you're going to lose your hair for sure, fatigue for sure. But other than that, you'll go with it. But I wanted to comment on one thing, because I was scared about losing my hair. And at the same time, I was like, I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to let whatever go. And I'm going to believe and say my hair is going to grow back better and healthier. And I was going through a chemo cleanse. So I was being cleaned by this chemo medicine, healing me and saving my life. And when I shaved my head, my dog ran away, but Larry looked at me, my husband, he was like, you still look like you. And I remember feeling like no matter all the changes, I still was me. And it's like the people that know you and love you, they're only seeing who you are. They're not seeing, all the shit that's going on in your body. And that was kind of cool. Like we are who we are, no matter what we look like, no matter what we have, no matter what, anything else. We are truly who we are supposed to be inside.
Yeah.
And for mine, I didn't think losing my hair would faze me. That's just not really who I am. I'm like, okay, if I lose my hair, I lose my hair. It's going to grow back.
Yeah.
And you move on.
Right.
When my hair started coming out, that was probably harder for me than my diagnosis.
Wow.
I literally could not look in the mirror without bursting into tears. I covered my bathroom mirror so I didn't look at myself. It was that traumatic. And just to this day, it is still, I'm not over it. This is still very fresh for me. Granted, my hair's growing back. It's growing back healthy. It comes back very different. But it's all about just learning the process, but being able to share these stories with other people. For instance, even in doing the cap treatment, if we can educate people as to the cap treatment, what are your options? What do they do? What's the success rate? A lot of it depends on your cocktail that you're going to be given. Had someone told me the cocktail I was having, my hair probably would not have survived. I wouldn't have undergone that expense.
Yeah. And I chose not to do it because everyone had told me it's like 50-50 chance. You're still going to lose half your hair. And it's hours extra in the chair for chemo. So, and it's painful.
It's very
And I
painful.
was like, you know what? This is just fighting everything that's happening. I'm going to just surrender and let chemo do its job. And it was easier. And my husband thought like I had a really good head. My mom was always praised like for pushing me out the right way because I had like the perfect head.
She's like, you have me to thank, honey. Your head is shaped just the way it is. You have me to thank. You're
Yeah, exactly. I bought like all these different color wigs. My husband thought he was like dating somebody a different day every day. I also challenged myself. I'm like, I'm going to be bald today. Are people going to think I'm a rock star, or they're going to think I'm a cancer patient? So it's just like a curious kind of experiment. And most of the time I just kind of was easy and I wore a beanie because it's kind of cold when you have no hair. So
Understood. So really quick, before I go to my next question for both of you, Stacey, I'm curious. So you mentioned it very briefly that you still having some difficulty looking at yourself in the mirror. I was going to ask you because you mentioned that you closed your mirror off. You put a towel or blanket on it. Do you recall, or if you have, do you recall when you moved the towel down a bit to see yourself, or you took it off completely, or do you take it down for a moment just to make sure everything's okay and then you put it back up?
I did not. I put like moving paper up. It was
Okay.
literally like moving paper I taped up on the mirror, so I wouldn't.
Okay.
There was no looking.
Okay.
Now what survived from my treatment is the entire crown of my head was gone. So the crown was gone,
Mhm.
and I started with a mane of hair. I had a mane.
Mhm.
I had a ponytail about the size of my pinky. That's all I had left, like just a little ponytail back here. And I think the moment was, and this was after the 26 rounds of chemo, it was after radiation. And it was about 3 months after when you could start treating your hair better. And it started, some's growing in. And when my hair was growing in, it was growing in jet black. And I'm a natural blonde. So I was freaking out. I was freaking out.
Mine was jet black too and curly, but my hairdresser wanted to shave it a couple times before letting it really grow in, because then it would be thicker and healthier and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's so interesting that
mine
your
came
hair comes
in
back different.
curly, and jet black.
Wow.
So my hairdresser is one of my very, very dear friends. And so I went to her house. We sat in the backyard. She set up a station in the backyard because of the pandemic, once again.
Mhm.
She had a mirror. I said, I can't look in the mirror. So she turned me around. I wasn't looking. And she finally said to me, Stace, your tail is coming off. She called my little tiny ponytail that it was holding on to. We have to take it off now. And I said, okay, I trust you. She cut it off. She trimmed up what little bits of flying hair I had. And I left that day in shock, and at that point, I knew now my hair was going to start to grow back, that now there's no going back. I was holding on to that one little ponytail. That was all that was left of me. So I claimed it. And I think once I got rid of it, it was very cleansing. I think it was very good for me to do that.
Yeah.
Lesson learned, I probably would have done things very differently.
Yeah.
But once again, these are the things you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's the things people don't talk about. And if you could talk about these with people who have undergone similar experiences, you don't feel so alone. You're like, oh my gosh, I had those same feelings.
Right.
It just validates what you're feeling, where you don't feel that you're out on this island by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that's kind of where I felt. I was on this island by myself, and I was going through this journey of not knowing where this journey was taking me.
Yeah, the unknown is even scarier than when you're in the journey. But if I had told you, if I knew you, I didn't know her.
We didn't know each other.
We met through our cancer journeys and came together with, I had started Zero Negative, and then she was looking for, well, her hairdresser.
It
put us
was my
together, actually.
hairdresser
Yeah.
that hooked us
But
up.
it was like, yeah, a match made in heaven. But if I
So
had
it's
told
those hairdressers, those the beauticians and hairdressers, they know people, they know everybody.
yeah,
It's
they're the
therapy.
connectors. Yeah.
It's
It
like a
is.
therapy session.
But
Absolutely.
it would probably have been helpful if I said, your hair is going to grow back so good if you get rid of it, and you're going to look beautiful as a bald, get all the things, and it's like an experiment. I mean, it helps just for little tips from people, or if people would say cold caps don't work, don't do it. That would be super helpful.
Right.
But I also wanted to touch on one thing. Before my cancer journey, I was very critical of myself, and I probably could say I didn't love myself. I was not used to loving myself. I was very judgmental, critical. I grew up as a gymnast and being controlled and very hard on myself. And when I was experiencing all the grief and the loss, I blamed myself. So it made me hate myself more. There's something wrong with me. And with cancer, I learned how the bottom line is self-love. And when we love ourselves, we are given the strength and the understanding that we didn't do this, we didn't cause this on ourselves. This is something that is teaching us. Like, I learned the hardest lesson, that self-love is the basis and the root of everything. And when we don't love ourselves, like this, the whole world doesn't love itself right now. And we see what's going on when people don't love themselves. They're angry, they're hatred, and blaming everybody else. And so I had to learn that the hard way, but also I'm glad I learned it. So part of what Zero Negative's message is, it's all about love. Love is so powerful. Gratitude is so powerful.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's
To get
right.
through everything.
Mine was the same. I looked at it when I got the diagnosis. What have I done? I kept saying, I'm a good person. I've never, I've done all these
Yeah.
things, and I'm a good person. Why me? Why, I've already been dealt this, now this. And I was so angry, and I took it personally. Like, why? What did I do wrong? And I was trying to find, what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, it's a punishment.
And then you're embarrassed. And then I've gone through, and I still, because I'm still dealing with a lot of the side effects, and you start going like, why does this keep happening to me? And I was telling someone today, it's almost like you're embarrassed, because every time you turn around, you're hitting another roadblock, or something else is wrong. And you're like, but why? So you've got to just, and then I go, okay, this is happening, but you know what? Whatever it is, I'm going to get through it.
Right.
I'm not going to be dealt something that I can't deal with.
Yeah.
I do believe in that.
Okay.
And there's a reason why I'm being dealt what I'm dealt with. And it's to help other people.
And that leads me into my next question.
Uh-huh.
Continue. No, go ahead though.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's just really is in giving back and helping others has helped me learn to love myself. Because I have to practice what I preach.
Here, here.
So super important.
It is. And the question that because this, again, this goes into my next question about your spiritual journey, your faith. How has that evolved? Especially when you were dealing with those areas of grief, the losing of your hair, the recognizing that you lost a part of who you were, your self loss. How has your spiritual journey regarding, how has that changed with all that you've been through? You know, still going through your grief, but yet you're coming to this side where you're looking at the glass full as opposed to being depleted, if that makes sense.
I think for me, mine has changed it's changed dramatically, because at first I was really angry. Like, why me? This is, enough. And now I look at it, it's a positive. I'm not quite where Jenn's at, that it was a gift. I'm not there.
Well, a gift is a nice way of putting it. I just trust everything is happening for a reason.
Mhm.
So it might not feel like a gift, but there's a reason for it, and purpose and teaching and healing. And I think as a human being, if we're not growing, we're going to start dying in a way. So it's all stuff to learn from and evolve and help us grow. And everything that's happening to us is happening because there's a reason. And it's our job to figure out the reason, or just be curious about what it could be. You know, what am I supposed to heal? I definitely believe that disease in the body is trauma that's begging us to heal and look at it. And as children, I mean, we go through a lot of trauma.
And I think
if we don't deal with it, it's going to turn into something that's going to kill you.
And I think that is a huge thing, is I've been always one my whole life. I've held everything in.
Yeah.
I've held it all in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start thinking, well, this really is not very healthy.
No.
It's not leading me in a direction. And so if I can embrace now and own it, which I do.
Yeah, know that somebody else probably feels the same.
And share my story. And if I can help someone not go into that dark, deep spot, then I've accomplished something. But I do believe, and I think spiritually, I can now say that it's helped me become who I am today. And as much as even getting on this podcast and sharing the story, because a lot of people don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of this is my coming out to people who will say, I had no idea.
Yeah. And that's important, you know, that we have to give ourselves permission to even feel it, you know, to recognize it, you know, and in some way even honor all that you've been through. I mean, you ladies mentioned how you didn't feel like you really loved yourself prior to everything that's happened, and now you guys are in a different headspace where I love myself more than I've ever loved myself in the decades before. And whether I was a gymnast or a mom or a wife, you know, I love myself more so now, because things clearly can change from one minute to the next, you know, and tomorrow isn't promised. So if I don't do nothing else, I need to make sure that when everything's all said and done, that love is still intact. It's in me, and I'm able to share that with others and educate them that though this is not what we signed up for, there's still lessons to be learned, to where if you honor the experience itself, eventually you'll get to that point where you'll find that there still is greatness throughout it all, you know.
Exactly. And the harder part with the grief is if you're trying not to feel it, if you're trying to hide it or push it away. And when you're actually feeling it, it's almost like it's a muscle that takes practice. But when you feel it, you get like, it's okay. Like, it's the thought of what it's going to be like when I feel it that's worse than actually feeling it.
Yeah.
And to process it, you have to feel it. And sometimes that means you're not alone. You have to go to a therapist, or I've seen so many healers throughout my journey. And we live in a country where we have so much available to us, whether it's therapy, talk therapy, shamanic healing, plant medicine, Reiki. I mean, there's acupuncture. It's all inside of our body, and it's like energy that needs to shift.
I agree.
And so it's definitely, you know, a tool.
I agree. I definitely agree. So
to learn also to have no regrets. That is one thing from this journey. I have really no regrets. I lost my mom to endometrial cancer a couple months ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And thank you. And dealing with that grief,
Mhm.
that's a whole nother type of grief. But I can now say, in undergoing the grief, and as painful as this has been, I mean, this has just been an absolutely horrific couple of years. I have no regrets. There's nothing I would have done differently, except in regards to my treatment plan. But as far as like my relationships, I've learned have no regrets.
Yeah.
And that is one thing. When my mom passed, I could say, I have no regrets. There was nothing not said. There was nothing left on the table. It was, and that made it that much more, it made it easier to help process. It doesn't mean the loss is any less, because it's a huge void in my world. But I just, no regrets. No regrets. So important. Say what's on your mind, share what you need to share, and don't be afraid of being judged. And if people want to judge you, so be it.
Well said. Well said. So, ladies, thank you so much for sharing your stories with me, with my audience. I know without question the test that you ladies had to endure and that you're still enduring is becoming testimonials. Truly, that's what it is. I don't know. Like we said, everything happens for a reason. And though you can't see it, when I see you two ladies and I see how that sun is shining through the window and how I literally see like a glow, a light that's literally surrounding you ladies. That continues to just reconfirm that you ladies are a walking blessing in itself, for not only for one another and for those of your family and friends, but for those who you have yet to touch. And I'm just very honored and thankful for you to share just a snapshot of exactly what it means to still have no regrets, to learn to love yourself through it all, and at the end of the day, that you're not alone. Because I think that's important in especially in the society in the world that we're living in today. And so I would love for you I'd like to give you ladies another minute or so to just tell us anything that you ladies are working on, any upcoming programs, projects, speaking engagements, so people can support you as you continue your journey, and we can support each other. So if you ladies have anything you're working on, please take this time to share it with us.
We just had a big fundraiser about 10 days ago. It was a girls' night out theme, and it was raising money for the Johnson Cancer Center Foundation, which is at UCLA, which is where I did all my treatment. And the month of October, we are still raising money. So we have a link on our website, shopzeronegative.com, if anyone wants to donate to that cause. I wrote a book with my husband. It was my journey as the patient, his journey as the caregiver. And it's kind of like a he said, she said, two perspectives in one story. And it's about how we survived love, marriage, and cancer. And it's called Everyone Needs a Larry, and it's available on Amazon. And it's a quirky love story with cancer and how we survived. So if anyone is going through cancer, it gives tips and advice and all the mistakes that we made, and also all the lessons that we learned.
It's a great book. It's kind of, to me, it's almost like a little spin of Harry Met Sally and Sally Got Cancer.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, and so it lightens it up, but as well as it's joyful, it's educational, it's something you don't have to have cancer to read this book.
And it sounded like that, because I definitely will visit that. I will definitely take a look at that. I'd love to support you with that, because people may not be dealing with cancer per se, but they may deal with somebody who has a different health illness, that could be very impactful to any relationship. So I
Mhm.
definitely want to support you and get that information out. And that information will be on the podcast description, so they can definitely support you.
Okay.
Stacey, what about you? Is there anything that you are continuing to do, working and healing through your journey? Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience on what we need to educate ourselves about? Or
I think just one of our things is Jen and I right now, as we gave you our website information, we're in the process of relaunching a new website, which our old one will funnel over to.
And it's now a foundation, a
And we're
nonprofit foundation.
We're a 50,
Yeah.
we are a 501c3,
Yeah.
which is wonderful.
Called Zero Negative Foundation. We have things that are related to our journeys in about love and gratitude. We have tote bags that say love. We have crossbody bags that say love. We have t-shirts that like healing cancer in style, but a lot of it, all of it has proceeds that go back to cancer research.
Wonderful.
So it's like a gift that gives back.
And this is and we're an organization that's not just breast cancer.
Yeah.
It's any kind of cancer or any kind of chronic illness
Mhm.
could use this. And
Yeah.
one of the things we really want people to know is no one needs to fight alone.
Mhm.
And
We'll have a podcast.
yeah, and we're there for you. But on our website, the new website as it comes up, I mean, there's going to be just a ton of knowledgeable information from if you're going into chemotherapy. What do you need to take to chemotherapy? People don't tell you these things.
Yeah.
We're going to be having chemo bags. So if you need to purchase a gift for someone who is just recently diagnosed with cancer, a chemo bag, which is going to give you all your little necessities for chemotherapy.
nice.
Whether from recipes, healthy recipes, when you're undergoing chemotherapy, there's certain foods that you really want to help cleanse the body because these are toxins.
And
Right.
also reminding people to breathe, and tools like gratitude journals and meditation and who to reach out to and different support groups. And eventually we'll have a roundtable podcast. That'll be probably next year. And it might be called The Shit They Don't Tell You. But we'll bring, different guests on, and we're very excited about that.
And you know what? It's interesting because I'm sitting here thinking about that. In terms of the t- the title you said, the shit that they don't tell you. I was sitting there thinking, oh, that would be so neat if you look at it how it's spelled, you have the C in parentheses and then hit that they don't tell you. So it's still like the shit that they don't tell you. So it's still cancer as a hit that they don't tell you. So yes. That was just an idea. So you heard it from me, but but
We may
but
have you on our podcast next.
Yeah.
How
you
about
know
that?
what?
To talk about grief.
Listen, I would love to be on your podcast, and I look forward to having more of these dialogues and conversations because, again, though I have not experienced it myself directly, I have been impacted by those who I cared about who have unfortunately either have been diagnosed with cancer, and not just breast cancer, or who has transitioned because of it itself. Um, it affects all of us, but how we are able to come together and to support each other in some capacity, that's what truly resonates the spirit of who we are. So, I would love to do that. And so again, I thank each of you ladies for just sharing your story, sharing your time, the transparency of it all. I appreciate that because again, they don't tell you everything. And even what you shared wasn't everything, but at least it kind of helps us paint the picture as far as that. No, this is not an easy walk, but you can still walk it.
It's not an easy
You
one,
can,
but
not
you
easy.
have to.
You don't have a
You don't have a choice.
Mm.
So stop feeling like, why me? And just let's start walking, holding hands. And it's a chapter. What I also learned is cancer is a chapter. It's not your entire life. So it's like there is a day one and then there's an end. So it's
Right.
like you just keep checking off the days until you get to the end.
Absolutely.
It doesn't identify you.
No.
That's not that is not
adding to your resume.
It's adding to your resume, but
Yeah,
you don't
great.
need to be. And one of the things we do refer to ourselves as, we're thrivers.
Thrivers, yeah.
We're a
Yeah.
thriver.
Yeah. Because there is a difference. And again, it starts with the mindset. It's a difference between being a survivor and a thriver. And
Yeah.
you are not you're not complacent. You're not at a plateau. You are soaring up. Because again, like I said, even like I'm looking at you ladies, there's a light that is shining behind you ladies that has a glow. So trust me, I do hear what you're saying. And again, I'm so humbled and honored that you shared your stories with me and my audience. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, your information will be on on the podcast description so people can continue to support you even when you guys relaunch your website. I definitely want to make sure everybody is educating themselves about this disease, this cancer. It sucks. It really does. It doesn't matter if it's ovarian, doesn't matter if it's prostate, breast. It sucks. Multiple myeloma. It's just terrible. We got to be more empathetic. We got to be in a state of gratitude, and we definitely need to be in the state of mind of hope and love for each other, because we just don't know what people are dealing with behind the scenes. We just really
Very
don't.
true.
We just
Very
really
Well
true.
said. Well said.
Well, we're
so
grateful that I've met you, and this was our
likewise.
very first podcast together. I think we would do it again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys did great. You guys did great. So, let me go ahead and just tell my audience, thank you everybody for joining us on another episode of It's Not You, It's Grief. We hope you were able to find some information that resonate with you to get get tested. Definitely do the genetic testing. Definitely, ladies, get your mammograms done. Especially if there's a history of cancer in your family, whether it's breast or otherwise, get it done. Gentlemen, get the genetic testing done too. Have these conversations out there. There's just like Jen said, there's so much, we have access to so much. All we need to do is just walk through the door and start having these conversations. It's important. I want everybody to feel like their support, that we're here for each other. And with that, take care, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode. And just stay well, and we'll take care. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Uh-huh.
us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, being intentional, and sharing this moment with us. We at It's Not You, It's Grief deeply understand the many facets of grieving, and we want to make sure we can be here for you. Again, thank you for listening, and tune in again wherever you subscribe to podcasts. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be well.